Orthodox clients from a very naive perspective. I had to learn really quick on my feet a lot of the stuff. And in that process of talking to people and learning about their Judaism, I was speaking with some family members, just random conversation about God of one of my clients. And these family members were talking in a way about God that I was connecting with more than any other area in my life. And I felt more connected to what they were saying and what they were expressing. And these are Satmar Hasidic clients than my 12-step recovery friends even.
1, 2, 3. Hello and welcome to the Brainstorm podcast. And now, your host, Sonny Perlman.
Okay, so we are live. One clap. I'm supposed to do that. Okay, we're live.
Amazing.
I'm told what to do. They tell me. Okay, so usually I do an intro, but actually we're at this conference and we're doing these like special on the road podcasts. So I'm going to kind of ask you to do your own intro. Okay. But I will say that I am very, very excited to sit with you. I know you as Faith Niece, but apparently you have a real name, Amuna Niece, and
Goldberg.
Goldberg.
Even more Jewish than just Amuna. Yeah.
Amuna Goldberg. I will tell you that Amuna is not a Jewish name. It's a Hebrew name.
It's a Hebrew
but
name.
there's not a lot of Amunas out there.
I'm not a Charney, you know. It's
Right.
Yeah.
You're not like Chani or something like that. You are, okay. So, there are many, many things I want to talk to you about, but just as starters, if you could, this is a weird thing to ask someone to do, but
talk about yourself.
Introduce yourself.
I'll introduce myself. So my name is Faith Niece. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, a licensed marriage and family therapist, and a certified sex addiction therapist. And I have been in the field of treating addiction for around 14 years now, which makes me very old, even though I always say I'm
starting to calculate.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody starts calculating. Whenever I speak about my sobriety, I have 18 years and sober from drugs and alcohol, and I always tell people I got clean when I was 10. Just so that they don't have to do the math.
It's a good cover up.
Yeah, but I got clean at 18. So I started in the field of addiction when I was pretty young, and from there pursued a degree and training and being a therapist. And I've worked specifically in process addictions for the majority of my career. So I also own a group practice here in Boca Raton, Florida, where we have an amazing staff of clinicians ranging from marriage and family therapists to individual therapists, as well as somatic breath work and everything in between. And so we do individual, couples, and intensive work at my practice here in Boca Raton.
Holy cow.
Lionhearted counseling for the shameless plug.
Lighthearted counseling?
Lionhearted.
Oh, I think you said lighthearted. Okay. Lionhearted sounds the opposite of lighthearted.
Yeah, it is.
What does lionhearted counseling mean? What does that mean?
So I registered that name when I first came out of school for a couple different reasons. I'm very connected to the idea of the astrological signs, and any Leo is really obsessed with themselves. And so
are you a
as
Leo?
A Leo, yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh. But the thing that I like about the idea of that lion mentality is that we work in groups. Lions work in a group, they work in a pride. They typically thrive when they're in togetherness, and they all rely on each other as a collective in order to be powerful. So while lions have strength individually, they have more strength together. And that idea of bringing together and creating strength in numbers and community and group was really what made me think of that idea. And the heart part is just because words that come from the heart go to the heart. Even before I was Jewish, I was aware that that heart-centered approach is the only way to create true connection and change. So that's how Lionhearted counseling was born.
That's cool. Do you trademark that? It's trademarked?
I don't know. Are you going to run to do it before me, or?
I'm just wondering if that's you. Okay.
I should trademark it, right?
My wife is a businesswoman, and she could talk to her about trademarking. Right. She's right in the middle of the trademarking world. Yeah, but I have a Leo. Don't we have a Leo, babe? Yona, my son. August
he's
is
your
Leo?
Favorite kid, right? No.
I am not saying that. He's my favorite oldest son.
Yeah, there we go. Because he's your only oldest son, right?
Well, he's my third kid, but oldest son, yeah. But he's
But Leo is August, and around beginning of or mid-August or late July to mid-August is Leo.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know nothing about the signs. I know.
What are you?
I am a Cancer.
Oh yeah, Cancer.
Does that say something about me?
Well, my immediate, yes, it does. Of course it says something about you.
What does it say about me?
It says that you're very family oriented, that you're warm, that your home life is probably your most important thing that goes on for you.
Heck yeah.
You can have a very...
So I'm exactly a Cancer?
I hate to break it to you.
Pretty lame.
It's weird, right? That astrology actually is, right?
Okay, well, all those things are true. So I guess I am a true Cancer.
Pop psychology, became pop psychology for a reason. It's relatable. I think
relatable.
Astrology is like that pop psychology thing. When you get into astrology in a more in-depth way, there's a lot of different planets that actually impact each individual person and their personality. But that general, basic, most of us can relate to our basic.
And you like this stuff?
I was real into this stuff. I once you have kids, you have no time for anything.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So astrology goes out the window.
Astrology goes out the window. Like when they're born, I do their birth chart, and then I never look at it again. But yeah, I was very into the concepts of astrology for a long time.
Wow.
And
well, let me ask you. I'm gonna ask you a question because there are two things from your intro that I wanted to ask you about. One is what you were working with Jews before you became Jewish, right?
Yeah. Yep.
That to me is very fascinating. I'm assuming you're seeing kind of the roughest part of the Jewish community. Most people really inspired to become Jewish when they see the beauty and you understand my question? You're coming from something so unique that it's almost unheard of.
I know, the Beis Din the whole time. That's one thing, yeah. So I converted after becoming a therapist, and I was in the field for 6 years before I decided to look into conversion. And I'll backtrack. So about 2 years before I ever converted, I was looking into all my spiritual beliefs, so being in recovery and seeking out spiritual solutions. I had come to a very concrete understanding of what I believed spirituality and God and what that was. And then I started to wonder, okay, it felt like it was pulled from all the different religious aspects that I had studied. And when I looked at where all these concepts actually came from, it was all based in Judaism. So Judaism was the only religion that I found that explained all the different beliefs that I had picked up from either studying Buddhism or studying the more the yogic tradition, studying the more occult or esoteric tradition, studying when I knew of Christianity. I never was a big fan of Christianity, so it makes sense to do. But it was just in general.
You used to be a Christian?
So technically I was raised Christian. My dad was in recovery as well.
Oh.
And so my understanding of spirituality was that God is the Force in Star Wars.
Right.
So I didn't get traditional Christian messages about Jesus and what spirituality was from a Christian perspective. I got more of a 12-step education of spirituality. So that also...
I always thought that was a great explanation of God.
Yeah, I love
God
it.
God is the Force.
It's the Force.
Yeah.
And it's everywhere, and it's at all times, and it can be used for good or it can be used in a bad way also. And that was
wait. So wait 1 second. I totally agree with the other force, but you're saying that you're looking at all these other religions and seeing Judaism as the common denominator. The common denominator of everything that you're resonating with you, everything that you're learning.
Yeah.
So you're seeing Judaism even in Buddhism, kind of.
Yeah.
That's quite fascinating.
So it was just, and I had a friend who, she was the most Jewish friend I had, and she read her Haftorah at her Bas Mitzvah type, She wasn't Orthodox Jewish, but she was the most religious of the friends that I had. And I asked her, I was like, what do you think? Do you think I should convert to Judaism? It's all the same beliefs. I'm believing this anyway. I dated a couple Jewish guys. I'm maybe I'm supposed to be Jewish. And she was like, don't do that. It's a terrible idea. You have all of the spiritual benefits without any of the BS that comes with it. Just don't do that. And she had some experiences that made sense why she would deter me, and she did the right thing by deterring me, actually, because
that's what you're supposed to do.
That's what you're supposed to do. And I don't think she knew that's what she was supposed to do, but she did the right thing.
She was once again being a good Jew.
Exactly. And so, but the thing is I feel if something's truth, if something's supposed to happen, you'll keep getting the information that you should do this until it happens. And so the signs just kept piling up on my journey until I ended up in South Florida for work. And I was working, doing the sex addiction component for a treatment center, a men's trauma program. And so all of the Jewish clients that would come into our treatment center had sexual trauma or sexual addiction issues, so they ended up on my caseload. So now here I am, my first session with a Jewish person, and we're talking, and I'm like, why does he have 2 shirts on? Like, I knew nothing. I'm like, why does he has this white polo on, but why does he have a looser shirt underneath his tighter shirt? I'm like, it's got to be the sexual trauma. He's like wearing multiple layers. Like, this is my mind before I knew anything about tzitzis or Jewish tradition. I'm like, it's got to be the sexual trauma. He's wearing layers. It's a common thing in sexual trauma to want to protect your body or feel like you need to have multiple layers or things to feel safer within your skin. But it wasn't that. It was just tzitzis, and I just had no idea. So that's where I came into working with Orthodox clients from a very naive perspective. I had to learn really quick on my feet a lot of the stuff. And in that process of talking to people and learning about their Judaism, I was speaking with some family members, just random conversation about God of one of my clients. And these family members were talking in a way about God that I was connecting with more than any other area in my life. And I felt more connected to what they were saying and what they were expressing. And these are Satmar Hasidic clients than my 12-step recovery friends even. And it was just like, okay, it's gotten weird enough already. I'm treating Jewish clients. I'm living in Boca, like Jewish capital of the world. I'm like here, with these very ultra-Orthodox clients, and I feel closer to them than I do spiritually to their beliefs than I do in my own life. Like, I have to pursue this at this point. And so that's when my journey really started of seriously coming to a Beis Din and seriously coming to a sponsoring rabbi. And that was like 6 years ago.
Wow. How do you actually, this is just a curiosity question. Sure. How do you actually take the next step? Like, who do you like walk over to people like, who do you call?
So your local Orthodox rabbi, of course.
Like,
so
how would you
basically?
Yeah.
I did
what
a
do you
lot
do?
Of research. So the first thing I did was I started to research my lineage because I was like, it's weird to want to convert to Judaism. Why do I want to be Jewish?
Right.
Especially like this type of Jewish.
This could be similar to the signs thing.
Yeah.
You're looking for.
I'm looking for like, where is there? How can I make sense out of what seems like a very nonsensical act?
Right.
And I ended up finding out that it's possible that my 5th great grandmother was Jewish because she was in Italy where the Spanish Inquisition forced people out, and then there was forced conversions in Italy and Calabria area.
Right.
And the name matched with Jewish surnames and all this. And so I was like, okay, so how do I go about proving I'm Jewish? Like, so I can game the system and I don't have to convert.
Like, you just
so
am.
Like, I'm just am. Like, maybe I just am Jewish. Like, that was my thinking. I just am, and I don't actually have to convert because I'm called to all of this because it's truly me. And that's when I found out about, you have to go through a Jewish rabbinical court, and that real conversion has to be recognized by Israel, which is an Orthodox conversion through an Orthodox rabbi. And you have to have 2 witnesses that prove that your lineage is actually Jewish. So first I learned through that, and then I came to, okay, so I have to start meeting with rabbis. So I just went, I sent out emails to all of the local Orthodox shuls that I wanted to set up meetings with their rabbis to see which community I would want to live in and who would be willing to sponsor me as a convert and kind of escort me through the process with the Beis Din. And who did I want to learn from? And I ended up settling with Rabbi New. And that sounds bad. I ended up doing the honor of working with a Rabbi New in East Boca, here, Boca Beach.
I've heard that name, but I don't know who he is, but that's awesome.
Yeah, so then that really, that journey just continued to evolve and unfold as I went through it.
Do you still get, I'm thinking it myself right now, like I'm thinking exactly what your friend was thinking. Like, do you still get that from a lot of people?
I get it all the time. My husband still is like, why are you
good.
Jewish? Like, why did you do this? Like, I have kids with you, man. Like, you can't
Stop
question
asking this question. Yeah.
I think it is very strange to choose to put yourself in a position to have more rules and more obligations and more restrictions on yourself. I get that doesn't make sense. But to me, converting wasn't about the rules and restrictions. It was that the things that I'm asked to do in my daily life are going to bring more light into the world.
Right.
It was just like that was my mindset. That was my whole spiritual mindset before being Jewish, is like, we are like beacons of light, and how do we bring more light into every dark spot in the world so that we can elevate the world's consciousness? Like, that's where I was coming from before I converted, which is also a very Jewish concept, just like a little different, right? So when I converted, I was like, if my soul is Jewish, I just felt like it would bring more light than my non-Jewish soul. So that was also a big reason for doing any of the things I was doing. I don't know why, like lighting candles maybe is the easiest one to relate it to, because you're actually creating a light physically.
Right.
But why are all these other mundane things bringing light into the world? Maybe I won't know. Maybe I learn it. Maybe I try to find out why. But at the end of the day, I believe that it's doing something that I can't have tangible, and that means so much more than whether or not I get to eat at the new fancy restaurant that I want to eat at. So, because
it's incredible. I only know one other person. She didn't convert, but she became Orthodox while working with the most difficult part of the population, and I I asked her, like, why, what happened, and somehow it's just something drew her to come closer. So
I
it's
will say
similar.
though, it's watching the community support I had non-Jewish clients and I had Jewish clients in my experience, and the way the Jewish clients got supported, even though there's all the stigma and judgment and all the stuff that we see that's negative in the Jewish community when somebody is struggling with something we're scared of, the amount of outpouring of support is way different than what I was seeing my non-Jewish clients get. And I was really moved by that. I'm like, the funding would always be figured out. The visitation, we had to fight people away from coming to visit them. Like,
they're like, we're moving in.
Like, of wanting to check on and make sure, like, typically in treatment, a client comes in and says, oh, these 3 people I have to talk to. You know this.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, drug addict. No, you don't get to talk to those people. They're probably going to get you high. Like, you don't get to talk to them for a while. And you'll probably figure out they're not healthy people in your life. I have a Jewish client comes in with a list of people that he needs to be able to talk to. And of course, my same response is like, no, these are unhealthy people. And he's like swearing to me, like, no, these are good, healthy people. They have my best interest in mind. And I'm like, what drug addict has people in their lives at the severity of addiction that they end up in treatment that are healthy, loving, kind, supportive, and want the best for them? Like, I'm used to coming from the people coming in, everybody in their life that they're surrounded by has connections and ties to using, or their family doesn't want anything to do with them anymore, and maybe in the Jewish community that leads to a little bit more enabling. But what I saw was, where for addiction recovery, the Jews have a lot more support than some of my non-Jewish clients in some ways. I think there's a lot more adversity as well, just because now that obviously this was in the beginning, and I've learned how hard it can be to be an addict in recovery and be an Orthodox person, and the stigmas that go with that. But hopefully that's changing. So.
It seems to be changing.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, I see a weekend like this, and it's like just such a spread of different. I just did a quick pod with Rabbi Kessler, and I was telling him that I believe that this is the only time I've ever seen a Jewish community. It's a very weird thing to say.
Oh, you're not saying anything weird.
Because it's not like a Borough Park community, like that's a sect of Judaism. It's everybody, the whole spectrum, all together, loving each other. It's like I feel bad for anybody who doesn't get to see it. Just witness that. Yeah. We saw it a little bit after October 7th. We all came together, and it was pretty incredible. But this feels like something really special is happening. So so that's wild. I will say that's wild, and it's inspiring. And it also, one of the things is that a lot of my podcasts, people are talking about the problems in the Jewish community, and I feel very similar to you, that I just see the incredible outpouring of love and community. I think we need more. Yeah, absolutely. I think, but I always say that, the Jewish community is unparalleled in terms of support and care. It still needs work, but so I'm saying, coming from someone who's looking at, the opposite, and seeing, I actually experienced this when I used to visit some of my guys went to prison, and I would go visit, and the entire prison waiting room is Jews. Yeah. They're just sitting around, and every Jewish inmate has, families coming, there's playroom going, there's things happening, and then there's 1 or 2 non-Jews having, which to me is so odd, why you're not visiting. Right. but they get abandoned by their families, which does not happen in the Jewish community.
Does not. And I think that strength of connection is something that I really was attracted to, just because growing up secular, I had a family, but I had a very like rigidly disconnected family. So it's like we all love each other more than anything in the world, but we have nothing to do with each other. We're all not, like, it was so, it doesn't make sense growing up in. And so there is that attractiveness of my personal work where it was like, oh, the Judaism reflects something that I also crave deeply in my own healing, which is the sense of like support. Then I found out converts and orphans get like a free pass for always being taken care of.
They do.
Yeah. So then I'm good. I'm set now.
That's true. Those are the two things. I think widows also.
Widows are the third, but I'm not wishing that one on me. Yeah.
No, right. You already got yours. You just have to fit into one.
Exactly.
Okay. That's interesting. So you were looking for some real serious Jewish enmeshment in your life. Just like
some real good
unhealthy dysfunction. I will love you even if you don't like it.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so we're talking about okay, let's talk about process addictions a little bit. Yeah. First of all, I didn't stop you in the middle, but a lot of people that listen to this have no idea what process addictions are.
Okay.
So let's start there.
Yeah.
I let you go, but I knew I was coming back to it.
So in the realm of treating addictive disorders, we have substance dependency, substance addiction, which is the alcohol, drugs. I take a substance outside to mood or mind alter myself, and I put it into my body in whatever form or fashion. Whereas process addictions are a little bit more tricky because it's anything that I interact with. I don't necessarily have to ingest anything to be acting out in a process addiction. So process addictions, traditionally, we think of sex addiction, pornography addiction, love addiction, gambling, shopping, video games, phones, internet. Am I missing any of them? Maybe. There's always a fun
you covered a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and some people, we can look at food through food addiction, that disordered eating can also be viewed as food addiction, or overeating can be viewed as a food addiction issue.
Would you say codependency is a process addiction?
I absolutely believe codependency.
Okay, I don't know if you mentioned codependency.
I may or may not have.
All right,
but
we'll go back. We'll play it back. No,
yeah, exactly. Play it back. See if I have my facts straight. So codependency is process addiction. And this is where people always get hung up when I talk about process addictions, because they're like, oh, you want to take away all my hobbies? Like, what do I do? Life is going to be boring. Or we look at it as like, then everybody's an addict. Then there's no person who doesn't have an addiction, because we all have processes that we might not have a healthy relationship with.
Yeah, that's actually a great question.
So then, like, what's
I was going to ask that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I jumped the gun.
Is it? Sorry. No, I think the fascinating thing about process addictions is they get hated on by both sides. Yeah. Like the AA people are like, that's not real. Yeah. And the other people are like, that's not real. Yeah. And so, like the regular people, they're like, he's just cheating on his wife. Just stop calling it an addiction.
Yeah, if she would just stop shopping. She just wants to shop. Just let her shop.
Yeah, she likes to shop.
So it definitely is hard to understand, because I think that unless your addiction is cunning, baffling, powerful, like, it doesn't make sense. It's insane, right? So any person who doesn't have one would think that's crazy. Why would that ever be an addiction? Or they're in denial because it is an addiction for them. And if I acknowledge it's an addiction, then I have to start to take a look at my own behavior. So addictive disorders, as defined by DSM-5, is it's progressive. It inhibits my functioning. I have negative consequences due to the behaviors. We look at those diagnostic standards for how to define a process addiction as well.
But you don't, I'm a little bit on the dark side on this one.
Oh.
Where I get a lot of flack for this one, is that I really do believe that everybody's an addict. And I do believe that it's a spectrum. And I do believe it doesn't change anything. Because in my eyes, if you're from 75 to 100% addict, you better get to 12 steps and get better. Yeah. It doesn't really change anything. But I do believe that it is a dynamic thing in your life, that, like, there are points in your life where you could be much more addictive. You know, you lose a spouse, and all of a sudden you're smoking and eating like crazy, and you're acting like an addict, and you feel lonely, or, you know, you're having a tough time, or you lost work, or, you know. So there are times where it comes and goes, and I've had, like, real big book thumpers get real upset at me that it's in or it's out. Right. You know, you're an addict, you're not an addict. You know, we have that line, you turn a cucumber into a pickle. And so I kind of think everybody's on this spectrum, and I'm trying to keep mine at like 30%.
So then why can some people not stop?
Well, the way I
And some people can. Like some people, like in that spectrum, some people can pull back. Wow.
Yeah, there are, and that actually is the really confusing thing when someone says like addicts can't stop without using the program, and then you're constantly seeing people stop.
Right.
Is the other side like, how did that guy stop? He was acting just like me. That doesn't make any sense.
12 steps. So what?
So the way I see it is, I guess, more clinical, which is that I really see addiction as the antithesis of self-esteem. Like the higher your self-esteem is, the lower the addiction is. And, I see it. So if your self-esteem is really down to nothing, which usually comes from trauma and also being born a very, very highly sensitive person, I think there are two factors there. You have nothing to make yourself feel better at all. There's nothing in the tank. So to stop, you do not have a way to cope with the world at all. So like the 12 steps will build your self-esteem, that you become a person that doesn't need to use drugs. But you didn't change as a human being. You just didn't need the drugs anymore to soothe. So I see it as an external self-esteem or an internal self-esteem. So if I don't have an internal self-esteem that's strong enough, I'm going to use outside stuff, whether it's a process or a substance. I'm going to use it. So I do see it as like this dynamic thing. The people who can't stop are the people whose self-esteem is like at 15%, and they're just running on fumes. They got nothing to feel better. So if they feel any emotion, it could be a happy emotion. They don't know how to deal with anything, and the best way I can describe it to anybody is they're an infant emotionally. Like they cannot process these emotions for one reason or another. You can get into it, where it comes in trauma or this, or the whys. I actually think the 12 steps is super wise for not dealing with the why.
Right.
Because you could get lost in that whole story, right. and a lot of people are using it as excuses to like not get better. So I could definitely, and I do talk about the why, but it really doesn't matter. But something happened that it's empty, and we have to now fill that tank again. So like that's the fascinating thing about 12 steps, where it doesn't talk about stopping drugs or alcohol ever. It just talks about filling this tank. How am I able to accept love? How am I able to do the hard work to make myself independent? How am I able to help someone else so that it stays? That's really, and the 12 steps, that was, I think, the most shocking thing to me when I started learning about the 12 steps, which is very young. I was like, where does it tell me how to stop doing drugs? Like, where is it?
Right.
And it's not there. They mention it one time in 12 steps. All this stuff, but I'm saying it to the audience.
Please say, yeah, no.
So I'm kind of on the dark side in terms of like, I do believe it doesn't matter, because a guy who gets healthy could also slip up and end up back in the 70% zone again.
I also see that more with like the co-occurring addiction. So the idea is like people get into recovery, they think they're recovering from one thing, but typically addicts in recovery have multiple things that they're recovering from, and they say that the minimum is usually 3.
3 things they're recovering from.
Yeah.
I see it as layers. Actually, this is an interesting question. I'm curious what you think. I believe that the core of all addiction is people addiction. I'm using the word people addiction. Oh, you're on this. Okay. I believe.
Yeah.
So
Good.
I think one of the shallowest addictions is drugs and alcohol. Like in terms of like, it's the easiest. Yep. You don't have any, it's not difficult. You take something, you put it in. The process addictions.
I had a sponsor who said, if you don't touch it, you can't get high, right? So
right.
you just don't touch it.
Yeah, just don't touch it.
I would just never touch. If I never touched a glass of alcohol, I wouldn't drink it. If I never touched the straw, I won't do the Coke. Like
right.
It's easy in the way.
Yeah, now try to manage your food.
Right.
And like you have to eat it, but don't eat too much
right.
and behave and like that type of stuff. But I do believe it starts with us needing massive validation, trying with people. It doesn't work. It's exhausting. You can't make people love you enough. You try some sort of process. That doesn't work. And then you go to the substances, because that works, at least most of the time. And then even when it stops working, you kind of remember that it works. So you manage it, you up your doses. There's the most amount of control in the substances. So what I say is when you pull the substances away, and they're like, I don't have a sex addiction. Oh, yes, you do. It's right there. Yeah. It's just right underneath the substances.
Or the food or the
or
work.
the food, right? Then you go
work
down.
is one of the process addictions I didn't mention that I actually work with sometimes the most.
Work
Addiction.
I mean, there's so much. I would say religious addiction is also.
Religious addiction's a good one too.
Oh, there you go.
So the way I say it, similar but different, is that the core of every addictive disorder is codependency.
Yeah. Okay.
And that wounding and that codependent wounding is typically from shame and fear.
Right.
So the core wounding for any addict, when you boil it down, is shame and fear. And it's an oversimplification of a very complex history for a person. But at the end of the day, those are the things that can drive. And that's what you're talking about, that low self-esteem or low self-worth. So I don't disagree that everybody's an addict. I think that some people have more resiliency to slipping into the chronic addiction. That all of us have a propensity to like misuse. Like, so there's use, misuse, dependency, and like that scale. I'm missing one of them.
Well, they used to say use, abuse, and dependency.
Yeah. There's
now they switched it to like substance use disorder, and then it's like mild.
Right.
Like
moderate,
small,
severe,
medium, and large.
And so we all, yeah, exactly. Which shirt fits. So there is a scale of how severe something is, but it's also, like you said, I do agree there's layers to it. Most of them are interactive. So like one of the interesting thing about addiction is that addiction is a self-soothing mechanism for that desire to have something outside of myself to make me okay, right? It's unbearable to not have that, because without something outside of me, I just have that shame or fear, emptiness, terror, or whatever that is that's driving. And so in order to moderate that, I have to self-medicate. And the medication cycle is usually about intensity and numbing. So I'm going, the neural pathways that I'm stimulating is either I'm going to intensify because I'm feeling flat, and then when I'm too intense, I want to numb. And those comorbid addiction disorders actually work in tandem to regulate one or the other. So I could have a substance abuse problem where I'm using stimulants, and I could also have a binge eating disorder that is causing numbing. So we're using in tandem multiple addictions to try and get to this medicated baseline.
Right.
So you take one addiction away and the others go kind of haywire. And like you're saying, you peel back the layers and there it is. Like you take one away and other things go out of whack because they're trying to compensate for the lack of that regulating our nervous system's highs and lows, those peaks and valleys. So.
Oh, it's interesting. Okay, I have a question, but I want to tell you a funny thing that I invented that I never invented. Yeah, my wife says I never invented this. I got to stop saying I invented it. But a codependency doll. So
a codependency dog?
Yeah, a doll.
Doll.
You throw it against the wall and it says, "I'm sorry." I'm sorry. That's okay. I got to get back to. I just had to tell you about it because it's hilarious. Shoot. Now I forgot the question because it was a great doll joke.
Oh man.
Okay, first of all, I would say that I actually identify codependency as people addiction.
Yep.
So
that's what I figured when you said it.
Yeah, so it's the same type of thing. Wow. So actually, let me get into it because there's actual questions I have, because the struggle we have in our village program I run up north. Is actually Ellie Nash. I had like a discussion with him about this, and it was such a frustration because when I'm dealing with the drug addicts, it's like, don't use drugs. Just don't use drugs. Mm-hmm. And you can be in my program. Cool. And very rarely do people relapse. It's an amazing program. We're really proud of it. But then you have people with process addictions, and it's literally their addictions are all over the place, and they're relapsing in my program. Nonstop. And I don't want to deal with it in this, like you're breaking the rules way. I'm not doing that. I'm trying to help them. Right. And Ellie Nash just said one thing that like completely calmed me down, which I'm really grateful for him for, which he just said, drug addiction or substance addiction is about a 1-year process. And this is about a 5-year process. Yeah, don't rush it.
Yep, 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, well, he said 5 to make me feel better, so I'll go with it. But
he doesn't want you counting down for the 3 and then disappointed. When
right, like, wait a minute, I waited 3 years.
3 years for this guy.
Yeah. So, first of all, why is it taking so much longer to deal with the process addictions in your in your view? Like, what do you think is happening?
There's a lot going on there. One is the depth of the process addictions versus, like you said, that substance abuses can be shallow. It seems like a shallow sort of process because you just stop doing it. Process addictions are, like I was saying, these modes of behaviors that are so ingrained in our functioning that we are so unaware of it that we don't see the writing on the wall that we're going to relapse, which substance abuse addicts can relate to that also. Like I thought I was going to be sober and then all of a sudden I have a drink in my hand. Right. But we can pretty much easier track back, like what was it that led to that relapse? When you track that back with process addictions, you might not actually be getting to the core thing that is driving the relapse because it's so innate to their personhood and how they adapted to survive. So food and sex are the only two things that we need as people in order to keep our whole population going.
Right.
So food and sex addiction are technically the hardest two to treat.
Right.
Because of how closely it relates to how we survived as humans and our brain structure and everything we're wired to do in the world. So if it gets dysfunctional, to counteract that, my brain is going to do everything to protect my addiction because it thinks it's doing something safe for my survival. It thinks it's doing something to help me. And because it's behavioral, instead of just don't touch it, it's don't do the thing that you were biologically wired to do in order to create survival of our entire species. It's like very much harder to see the writing on the wall when something's about to happen or withhold the craving or the impulse, and the amount of internal boundaries, touch the mic, versus external boundaries.
It's not that.
Okay, I'm like going to have a big loud bang on the audio. No, so the internal boundary system that it takes to heal from process addiction is much more technical, I guess, or it's much more difficult to identify than the external boundary system of substance abuse, where you just don't touch it. And hopefully you don't touch it and you figure out why you ever touched it and that. But with process addiction, you have to set so many internal boundaries for the external boundaries to stay intact. So in recovery from love addiction, for example, maybe in my inner circle, it is I'm not intimate with a partner until we're monogamous and have been dating for a certain amount of time. That's a common, so that I'm not mistaking the intensity of sex for love. I'm going to have that boundary in my dating plan. And
basically
I'm talking about
being
circles.
very from.
Yeah, basically being Orthodox.
Being Orthodox. No, it's so amazing. When you said that, I literally have a visceral reaction. It's not that I haven't heard it a million times, but we talk about food and sex being like, these are the things we need as a species. And those are the two addictions that have the highest level of shame. Yep. I mean, I have found, I have this amazing thing that I recognized a bunch of years ago. I was like, you walk into a room with people in recovery, and if they're substance recovery, they're like vegans. Like in 2 minutes, they're going to let you know they're in recovery.
Yeah.
Right, CrossFitters, they're like, oh, by the way, I don't eat that. Or, you sure.
Did you see me? I got to go work out, man.
Right, I got kettlebells going.
I can say that because I'm a recovering CrossFitter.
That's awesome. No, but it's wild because these are the things that like we should not be ashamed of because they are essential to our life being. But when you have someone who's a sex addict or a food addict, they won't tell you about it forever. No. I mean, you'll know them and they just will not share with you for years. And to me, I don't think addiction, you could do recovery. I don't think you could do recovery with that level of shame in your life. But it's wild. The way you put it is like, those are the two things we need to survive. And somehow our society has made those the two most shameful things.
But I'm going to take it deeper. It's not just society. It's that the shame correlates with how important it is.
Okay, explain.
So in order to survive as a species, if I'm doing something dysfunctional around food or sex, I might be jeopardizing my entire community. So it literally violates...
Ooh, I like your version better.
Right. So it violates the attachment to everyone around you. So I can't share it, or if I'm doing something, I feel so shameful about it because technically healthy shame, and this is Bradshaw's wording, John Bradshaw, wording about healthy shame versus toxic shame, right? Healthy shame is I throw my gum wrapper on the ground when I'm walking down the street and I'm go, ooh, yuck, that's not good. I'm going to pick it up and go put it in the trash. Toxic shame is, oh my God, I hope nobody saw me do that, and I run away and the piece of garbage still stays on the ground. Right? But when we get in toxic shame about food or sex, it's because I'm terrified that if anybody saw me throw the gum wrapper, metaphorically, that I'll never be accepted, I'll never be loved, and I'll never fulfill my purpose as a human biologically. And then we can bring that into spiritually. So it's so fundamental.
Wait, could I stop you with I mean, when I used to, until I spoke to Menachem Poznansky, and he told me, he started getting into shame, different types of shame. But I always thought of shame as I believe I'm bad, and guilt is I believe I did something bad.
That's Brene Brown's definition of
it.
Right.
Right.
Which I agree also. Like the shame means there's something wrong with me, and guilt is I did something that's wrong. So John Bradshaw defines that as healthy shame and toxic shame.
Gotcha.
Whereas Brene Brown talks about it as shame and guilt.
I kind of like the John Bradshaw version better because I don't like to think that anything we feel is bad.
Right. Why would I think that a part of me that is such a strong emotion is only a bad emotion? It started as a good thing, and that having a healthy relationship with myself is that my shame is information, not that my shame is fact.
Right.
And but when it comes to these, like if I'm doing something dysfunctional with food or sex, it's such a threat that I have to feel ashamed of it. But then there's no way to come back from it to say like, oh, I need to do something about it because of what's happened culturally around food and sex, in my opinion. Whereas back in the day, maybe there was less shame about it, or we would just kick the person out of the tribe. Who knows? It may have been more brutal in the past, but biologically speaking, we're wired to feel shame for things that threaten our connection with others. But that can be misperception. We can misperceive that it.
Right.
That it
so if you use our food wrong, and that would be you're threatening the community because you're eating our food.
Yeah, or I mean, if
like,
we think about
we only have a certain amount of food.
We only have a certain amount of food.
Don't mess with the food supply.
In a disrespectful, yeah, it's all of our survival. We're all dependent on it. If you're eating it and throwing it up, like, what's wrong with you? That just is somebody else might die because they didn't get enough, and you're not handling it properly.
Right.
Or you're overeating it, or you're avoiding it, which means you're going to die and not fulfill the species. Like if we're boiling it down to just basic biology.
This is amazing because I actually have not thought of it this way, and I'm really appreciating that you're saying it this way.
I was thinking earlier in our podcast, I was like, if me and Sunny don't disagree on anything, this is gonna be boring.
Okay, it's gonna be boring.
But at least if I can say something new, then it won't be boring, right?
I really like it. Well, I maybe like process it and like in a week from now go, I totally disagree with that. But right now I'm loving it. Okay, so now you're treating these process addictions, and you're doing it with the Lionhearted. What does that mean? Like, what is this intensive? Is that for those people? Like, what exactly is happening in this process?
I think so from process addictions, if we look at why did we adapt to lack the internal boundaries around these things and all this type of stuff, typically it comes back to childhood. Right, and the people who are like, no, I don't want to talk about my childhood. It doesn't have to all be connected to my childhood. I have news for you. We were all kids. And we all got hurt, and we figured out how to cope and survive.
Right.
So it's not about placing blame on our childhood. It's about looking at what were the developmental factors that made me vulnerable to or need these in order to survive. So I think it all comes back to the relational trauma that we've experienced. So at the root of healing any addictive disorder or trauma dysfunction, coming back to what relational trauma happened, and religious addiction is a form of relational trauma.
Right.
So that I would see this a lot. The severity of the relational trauma with my Orthodox clients is so intense because it's layered with the relationship with God. So my most crucial relationship, I also have trauma in that.
Right.
And so our intensive is really more focused on the relational trauma component that's going on beneath that. But there may be several steps before a client's ready to work on that deep of a trauma, because once we start to actually heal and come back to the understanding and see those parts of us that were hurt in that deep way, the grief can be really overwhelming. So making sure a client's in the right space to get there is part of the intensive work, because to come in a session once a week and get to that deep of healing, you got to button it up. You got to go back and be a normal, functional person for your family. Ideally, you have to stay sober without fully completing that healing process, hopefully, and that can be really painful to deal with. So working in intensive is about how to get down to the depth without having to button it all up and go back into normal life, and hopefully get through the process of healing at least one of the things that might be driving dysfunction or addictive behavior, so that you can leave with a plan of how to continue and maintain what you learned about how your inner child or your relational trauma is impacting your recovery.
Right. Well, how deep in recovery? Okay, this is one of my things that I'm like, a lot of places are throwing people into trauma work like day one. No. Okay. I'm glad you cringed. I know, as like a lot of people, they have trauma, so let's go to get trauma work. I'm like, you don't know how to deal with having a good day.
Right.
Like, how are you going to deal? I find trauma work to be traumatizing. Maybe not a bad traumatizing, but it's still traumatizing. And if I don't know how to deal with my emotions, and you're talking about buttoning it up, I don't think addicts could button it up at all, at any point. No. So I'm glad you cringed, but how long would somebody have to be in recovery or strong? Like, what are the requirements to go into an intensive?
Right. So the way that first off is there needs to be some established sobriety, because you can't start to get to the trauma while you're still medicating the symptoms. Right. So if you're medicating the symptoms, whether through process addiction, substance abuse, if that's not dealt with first, we're not getting down to the deeper stuff. It's like if you go into the emergency room, you have a broken arm and you also have a punctured rib, they could set your arm and you could die from the rib, or the punctured lung. We have to first heal the internal, like the most severe wounding first, that's going to be the most life-threatening, and then go backwards to the arm. So while the trauma feels like it's the punctured lung, it's actually the broken arm, if we're talking about addictive disorders.
That's interesting.
So the addictive disorder is the thing that's going to most likely cause chaos, dysfunction, like unrepairable damage in my life. So we have to first get containment around that. And once you're in a place where there's some stability, containment, support, then you can move into doing that. But what I do have people do from very early on, though, is start to look at and understand how their addiction didn't happen in a silo. Right. Didn't happen without all the things that led to it, and that
in a silo or a vacuum,
vacuum silo.
How is it a silo? I never heard that expression before.
Silo would mean, I think of like a grain silo.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
All the grain is just in this tube, and it's only happening in the tube.
It's just happening too.
Compartmentalizing, like that. Your addiction is not a compartmentalized part of you. Your addiction was something that's been living and breathing and growing and evolving up until the point of.
So you get like a view of like. It's interesting because I'm getting guys post rehab coming into my program, and they walk in and they're like, I'm ready to deal with this trauma. I see the work. I'm ready to go deep. I want to do EMDR. They all have their methodologies that whatever rehab taught them, and they're ready to go. And I'm thinking, I'm glad you got a little view of your future. Like you got to look in a glass ball and say, this has all happened. These are the things I got to work on. Now take your time getting there, but we're going to get there. Yeah. It's the way I describe it in like Jewish terms is this is like your Har Sinai moment. Like you're on top of the mountain, you see God, you connected, you see everything. Everything makes sense. You know, it's like an ayahuasca trip. I was like, everything makes sense. You see it, and then all of a sudden you're down from the mountain and you don't see it anymore, or you got a glimpse of it and you just want to go back to that.
Yeah, or somebody just built a golden calf
and then
screwed up your whole belief in everything.
No, but then you build a golden calf. That's what happens. Yeah. That's because you're trying to reconnect and you got to go back to your drugs or whatever. You know, that was their, it's interesting. Someone was saying like, where in the Torah, like I was talking about addiction, just happened like a week ago. And I'm like, I think Avodah Zarah is addiction. Yes. Yes. Like people were so dying to connect to a spiritual source that they would use a substance on this world to make them feel that.
Right, but that's any process addiction. Is Avodah Zarah, technically.
It's like an Avodah Zarah, but they all pursuits of spiritual connection to a higher thing. Yep. They're spiritual. So I think it's talked about all the time. So this, like the Jews were steeped in Avodah Zarah in Egypt when they were suffering their trauma. And then they went back to it after they saw this glimpse. So this is really something that I got to tell them, like, okay, slow down. We're going to go through this slowly. So, okay, I mean, that's where it's like one of my pet peeves. Take it chill, bro.
Yeah, and I tell clients this all the time because I think the hope is I'm going to do my trauma work and then I'm going to feel better. And I don't have to, and then I'll stay clean. Instead of I stay clean, I start to feel better and now I do my trauma work.
Right.
Like, and there's, unfortunately, as addicts, and humans, we want the quick fix. Like we want something that's going to work. Like, and I think trauma has been marketed really well in treatment.
Right.
And in the mental health industry, it's been like tokenized in a way as like, oh, it's my trauma, and not in a victimizing, like I think people genuinely are more aware of it now, but it's become something that is the key to everything, when like trauma is just the experience of human pain in a complex way that was never resolved. Right. And how much, like, how long does it take to resolve all of our unresolved things? It takes years. So even in trauma work, there's a process. There's no one size fits all. I think we're always looking for the quick ticket. Now, EMDR is extremely effective. Brainspotting is extremely effective. This experiential work is extremely effective. Like, there are things that grant relief. Psychedelics are effective. They give relief. We get insight. Right. But that's not the healing work. The healing work is the continuing to live in maintenance with what I've learned from those experiences. The doing my trauma work isn't the answer. It's not the key.
Right. You need to survive the 40 years of the desert.
Exactly.
That's what I'm going back to the same thing. Do you
Which
get
also
pushed
goes into
back?
the 3 to 5 years piece, by the way.
Right.
There has to be time.
I hope it's not
in the
40
desert.
years. I can't wait. But do you get pushback for saying these ideas? I feel like all these trauma programs, like, I don't get so much feedback from them because they don't care. They're filling up. They're fine. Yeah. But I'm wondering if you're getting like people, because they are literally taking completely dysfunctional people that are not able to function in their lives at all and throwing them into deep trauma work. I don't know what to do with that.
I don't work with them.
You don't really work with them. Okay.
So I don't get pushback or feedback about it.
Right,
The
so it's
places
similar.
that if I do refer somewhere, that is something that I feel really lucky about. My supervisor was big on educating about how to properly refer to treatment centers and how to evaluate a treatment center for their fit or their adequacy of treatment, and if it was effective or if it was just a money pit where or a farm to just funnel people through. And so I got a lot of details about how effective treatment looks, and trained in that from my supervisor, who is an expert in the field. So, and what I notice is that an uneducated consumer reads information or is told or sold a dream, and then when they don't get it, it's like every treatment's bad, and that's not true. There are very excellent treatment centers. It's about being able to discern what they are, going to an expert that knows how to discern. Right. And so, like, I say this about any therapy, treatment, that's like, we need to educate the consumer. And then these programs that are actually not doing a good, high quality of care will weed themselves out. Because we'll be able to, as professionals and as
What do you mean they'll weed
consumers,
themselves out? I don't understand what that means.
Because if the consumer knows what to look for, they're not going to go there.
It's very wishful thinking.
I know, but I'm an idealist.
I think marketing is very powerful. I'm saying, like, I have, these referral programs that will, like, this is the program I like, and they'll just keep funneling to that program, and even if it's a terrible program. I see this plenty of times.
So sad.
Anyway, okay, actually, that gives me a little segue, because that's one of my things that piss me off. What is, like, the thing, what are things in this field that, like, just get your goat, like, you just, sorry. I'm, like, asking my questions. I'm like, I want to know your questions.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, what's the things that you're getting your goat that you're like,
Man, you want me to say it? It's not pretty.
Well, I'll make it a clip, and it'll be up there forever.
The things that get my goat are abuses of power. And what I mean specifically is RBAM or therapists or people in a helping position who are using that position to take advantage of women and men, either sexually, financially, emotionally. My heart's racing talking about it. It's like, wow. And all of us have different purposes in the world. For some reason, my purpose in the world is to hear all the stories collectively about the one person who's doing this, or the multiple people that do this. And It's happened time and time again. So it's like crazy to me that we are in a community where there needs to be more accountability, but yet we let the type of things go by that are unacceptably done by RBAM therapists, people in the community who should not be put in positions of power. So I've done my
and we're not doing enough to take them out of power
because we're afraid to speak out. Like I've genuinely had clients who were sexually abused by someone say, how do I report them to the board, by a therapist? How do I report them to the board? Do I need to ask a Beis Din before I report them? Right. And I'm like, hell no, you do not need to ask a Beis Din. And maybe a RBAM will disagree with me for this, but there's no question that.
Well, you only say hell no because you don't think the base is going to do anything.
I mean, even if a Bayesian would do something, you've been violated by a professional who has a board in place to protect you, and you're questioning whether or not Judaism can tell you whether or not to protect yourself.
Right.
Why? And I understand the need for mentorship and going to your Rav and all of that, but there's almost this dependence on a Rav's guidance in a dysfunctional way when we can also know when something is fundamentally wrong for us. And to say, okay, if I go to my Rav and he says, don't report it, God forbid.
Yeah.
Then this person continues to work in a community and take advantage of other people. And I've seen that numerous times.
And these people are still in power. I do see this as well.
Yep.
But that
makes me so, it's like the craziest thing to me because I don't understand why are we afraid of holding accountable just absolute wrongs? I don't know where, and I've held my breath many times in making the call to appropriate people to start to out some of and I hold my breath because I know I might get on the phone with someone who's like, well, that probably didn't happen, even though I've heard from 4 clients that it did.
Right.
And
have you ever successfully done it?
Yeah.
Like got actual? That's satisfying.
It's satisfying, but it's not enough because it keeps happening.
It keeps happening.
I don't know what it is within the Jewish community that this happens. I know it happens outside the Jewish community too. I'm not demonizing the Jewish community, but there's this there's this insular protecting the respect, because I think that we think of very respectable rebbeim or even like professionals as having more information in their minds than we do. Like they're living Torahs. And so you can't, when they act inappropriately, we don't necessarily hold them accountable as humans because we think that they have something that we are lacking.
Right.
I don't know. This is a topic that I tussle with all the time.
Wow. I've dealt with this a bunch. It's not my biggest thing. I don't know why it's not my biggest thing.
You got something bigger?
Now it's, I got a lot of things that piss me off. But it's, I think the frustration is not really about the power. It's about the resistance to just say, okay, we have an evil guy in our midst, like get rid of him. I've been having a lot of conversations about like get refusal and stuff, which I get a lot of crazy feedback from. Like for some reason I get a tremendous amount of resistance. I'm like, take a chill, man. They're supposed to give again.
Right.
So, but the resistance, I think the frustration is, it's fine. Evil people doing evil things, that happens in every society. That's fine. The protecting them, that's where I don't know where to go with. That's the frustration.
Or the questioning why that maybe it didn't happen. Like why do we jump to denial before we jump to believing somebody's pain story? Like I think also the reason why this bothers me is because my training, like I really take to heart my training, and as a therapist I was very much trained that we have a responsibility to our clients to not misuse our power. Like I tell this story to my clients that have been abused by a power position person, whether it be their therapist or a rebbeim or even their parents are in power positions, is that, remember I had a client and he was a very high power lawyer at the time in Orlando, and he was very respected by the community, and he starts telling me this stuff in our second session, and I'm like, he should not be telling me this. And I was like, oh shoot, I am the person to tell this to. I'm the therapist. And I went to my supervisor and I was like, I had this visceral reaction that I want him to stop telling me this because he's telling me information that makes him vulnerable to me. And then I realized I am the person that people come and be vulnerable to, and that this is an honor, and I need to be able to be a welcoming space for all their vulnerabilities, because where else can he share this and not get used against him? Right? And so when something is used against a client in therapy, whether innocently because the therapist thinks that they're better than, or maliciously because the therapist is not well as a person and seeking out their client to fulfill unmet things, then I have a big issue with it, because it's like disgracing something so sacred, which is the vulnerability of human need.
And it's always the vulnerable that gets preyed on. Yeah. That's that's everybody goes to a rabbi. The vulnerable ones are going to be the ones if that rabbi is evil. I think it's been always my thing. This thing has always been, like, I work with teenagers for all these years, and the amount of times I got frustrated with teenagers is like 5. Like I never get, like, they're teenagers. Right. Like they're supposed to do that. And everybody's like, wow, you have like tons of patience. And I'm like, I just know where they are. So it's like, I don't have these expectations. But other people working with teenagers, or my staff, or people that I worked for, like, you're adults and you're in charge of these teenagers, and I expect you to stand, do the right thing.
Right.
And then the level of frustration I have from that. So my thing is, like, I've been involved in some of these cases of like trying to shut a guy down, and it's hard. And I'm like, why is this hard?
Why should it be hard?
Just tell him to do something else. I shut down a school once, and I liked the person who ran it. Right. He just struggled with stuff with kids.
Right. Right.
So, and I still like him. I don't think he did anything.
Right.
But it was his struggle, and it needed to stop.
Right.
And it's like it needs to end, and it should be easy to end. And you could be like, let's help this guy go to the next thing. But you cannot be in power with these people.
Position. Right.
The fact that there's all this resistance, first of all, I don't understand it. I could understand, like, you don't want to destroy a guy's life. There's a way to do this that makes sense. I think what scares me also is because, like, the Catholic Church went through hell with this.
Yeah.
And, like, why is it not coming for us? Like, it's coming for us.
Yeah. It already did a little bit about 5 years ago. There was a couple of big stories about sexual offenders that were being protected in the Orthodox community in New York, and it started to come out, and there was a little glimmer of hope that we might hold ourselves accountable for what was going on. But the minute it becomes a news story, then it triggers that, like, we have to protect ourselves from the outside world instead of cleaning house inside. There's a lot of this for me that I think also is the desire for. This sounds so cheesy. I don't mean to sound like such a convert, but like the desire for Mashiach, the concept of Mashiach.
You just say you don't want to sound like a convert? Okay, fine.
I mean, it is. It's one of those.
I want to be regular. I want to be a real boy. But my concept of Mashiach is that Jews are living in a way that is elevating the world. When a Jew does something that is so wounding and no other person is speaking up for that, or a very select few that also get shut down and quieted, I just feel like we're nowhere near where we need to be in order to actually fulfill our destiny on this planet. And I know it sounds so intense, but I think it is that big. Our lives are so small in the greater good, but everything that we do is so important and big, and when it comes to what's going on beyond this life. And so if we're not expressing ourselves as Jews in the way that is actually bringing us closer to, like, healing the world, then what are we doing? Like, it's so painful. It's so painful. That's actually a very hopeful. I'm glad you sound like a convert right now. We need someone to have a little hope here. Yeah. I do feel this actually when we get frustrated. Let's say, I bring up this Israel thing again, but October 7th, the level of frustration I have for the Muslim community not to stand up and be like, that was evil. Yeah, there are things we're upset about Israel. We're upset about that, and then we're not. But that was evil. That needs to be stricken, and there needs to be a full page ad put out in all the magazines. Right. That's evil. We don't do that. That's not who we are, right. And we're very judgmental about that. Right. And then we're doing it ourselves. Mm-hmm. So, like, don't get judgmental about that if you're going to do the same thing. That's, actually, there's a guy we met on the plane on the way here. Such an awesome guy. He was like the most Jewish person, but totally secular. Like, everything about him was Jewish. I loved it. And he was saying that, I forgot what he was saying. Sorry, brain fart. I blanked. But the
October 7th thing. That's what
he was saying. He was really, really upset about Neturei Karta, the guys, the Zionist guy, the anti-Zionist guys at the rallies. Yeah. And I was telling him, like, yeah, there's crap in every society. That's our crap, right? But we all know it's crap, and we say these guys suck. Right. Like, we're not backing them up and going, these guys are all right. Yeah. That's how it's supposed to be. I'm cool with that. Right. I was like, I don't get really offended by these Neturei Karta because those are our crazies. Right. Right. And everybody needs crazies. Yeah. If you point at them and say that's crazy, the problem is whoa, they're not crazy. You gotta it's not one of ours, so we protect them against. Right. And I get it. You know, it's like you can't mess with one of your siblings. Like we can mess with our own siblings,
But you can't mess with ours.
but on the outsiders don't get to mess. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Final question. Unless you have a burning desire to talk about something else.
Yeah, I could talk for hours. So
I know. But final question is the rooftop question. You're yelling from the rooftops, like something that just needs to get out. You need to tell the world. What is it? You can pick one of them. It doesn't have to be all of them.
Man, that's
Sorry.
Such a good one. My rooftop would be that the mistakes that you made about yourself, you can always like rethink that the perspective. If there's a negative perspective about you, it's probably a mistake. That whatever, if you believe that you don't have value, you don't have worth, you don't matter, that all of that is untrue. And that you are loved deeply and beyond our comprehension, even if it doesn't feel like that in the world, that healing is possible, that there's no harm that's happened in the world that doesn't have the exact same opposite brightness that we could achieve with it. And so all of our darkness is really light when we're able to stay on that process and transform. If you haven't found somebody to believe in you yet, keep going till you find the ones that do, because they're out there. And if you are in darkness and you don't see the light, keep walking, because you're just in the middle of the tunnel and not at the end yet.
Wow. That was really nice. I got a little chills. Thank you so much. That was awesome. I'm so glad I'm down in Florida and I got to do this with you.
So glad you were here.
This was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for this day that I've been given. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this chance. Thank you for this chance to live anew.